What's the fastest you've seen a crowd go from excited to horrified? During a Buffalo Sabres game, Clint Malarchuk took an ice skate to the neck, severing his carotid artery and partially cutting his jugular vein. He almost bled out on the ice. The sight was so horrifying 2 fans had heart attacks and 11 others fainted. Numerous fans vomited at the sight of all the blood. Malarchuk thought he was going to die on the ice, so his only thought was getting off the ice so his mum didn't have to watch him die on TV. He asked for a priest and had the equipment manager call his mum to tell her he loved her. The only reason he didn't die is the Sabres' athletic trainer was a combat medic in Vietnam. My parents were at the game and said that most of the fans assumed the worst and that seeing the ice turn red was one of the more horrifying things they'd seen in person. An American comedian in the Republic of Ireland saying how happy he was to be in the United Kingdom. Similarly, a Canadian band hollering "We love England" at the beginning of their set in Glasgow. Yikes. The entire assembled students from the elementary school where teacher/astronaut Krista McAuliffe taught at, who were broadcast live to the world, as they watched the Space Shuttle Challenge explode seconds after takeoff, killing all hands on board, including their teacher. Oh yeah, we had an all-school assembly to watch it, on a tiny TV up on the auditorium stage of course. I was in 3rd grade, we barely understood what was going on. The most unnerving thing was watching our teachers weeping quietly and trying to look strong for us. I was also in 3rd grade, but on West Coast, so I woke up to my mum crying in front of the TV. The science teacher took us out to watch it from the playground. We were only 50 miles away and could see it clearly. Then the fricking thing blew up. There was a guy performing risky stunt dives in a river for money. He pulled off great stuff and people were clapping and clearly hyped. One of the tricks went really bad and he crashed headfirst into a rock from a decent height and killed himself. I always remember what Penn Jillette said at the end of his nail gun routine. It was like, we find it morally wrong to put someone in real danger for entertainment. And I have to agree. They think it's immoral to make the audience complicit in danger. Basically, you're paying to see a magic show, not a medical emergency, so there shouldn't realistically be that possibility on the docket. Yes. And they managed to make it look dangerous in many of their acts. No need for real danger. A friend of mine decided it would be fun to try and see if he could smash a beer glass on his head. Up until then he was just being an enthusiastic drunk and had some positive attention. He then decided the beer glass thing was a good idea and promptly executed it. Head wounds bleed a lot in the first minute. Crowd went from "oh you're cute" to "fuck he's gonna die." I sobered up in an instant and got a semi-clean towel for him to stop the bleeding. Thankfully head wounds also stop bleeding pretty quick in most instances. Drunk ideas are almost never good ideas. WWE's Over the Edge 1999. Owen Hart fell 70 feet to his death during the event, and the company inexplicably continued on with the show after he'd been taken to a hospital. That's kind of fricked up. Monday Night Football, November 18th, 1985. Washington Redskins vs the New York Giants. I was pretty young at the time, so being allowed to stay up late on a weekday was a rare occasion. During one of the plays, Joe Theismann was sacked by Lawrence Taylor and Harry Carson of the Giants. The entire stadium went silent as Theismann would end up suffering a compound fracture of the tibia and fibula. What I remember most vividly is that the broadcast kept replaying it over and over again and seeing shin snap at a 90-degree angle. It made me physically nauseous and had to walk out of the room. If I recall correctly, following the injury, broadcasting policies were changed so that constant replays like this would not be shown in the future. Seeing Alex Smith's leg injury live was just as bad. I literally screamed in horror when that happened. Proof we live in the Matrix. Joe Theismann broke his right tibia and fibula on November 18, 1985 in a game in Washington that ended 23-21. The only 3-time Defensive Player of the Year Lawrence Taylor was involved in the injury, which occurred around the 40-yard line. Theismann's Pro Bowl left tackle, Joe Jacoby, wasn't on the field due to injury. Alex Smith broke his right tibia and fibula on November 18, 2018 in a game in Washington that ended 23-21. The only other 3-time Defensive Player of the Year JJ. Watt was involved in the injury, which occurred around the 40-yard line. Smith's Pro Bowl left tackle, Trent Williams, wasn't on the field due to injury. I'm not fact checking any of this, because I love eerie coincidences and want it to be true. Excellent clear writing by the way. It's true, I watched the game and I'm pretty sure it was pointed out on a sports network the next day. 7-8 years ago during a concert there was an earthquake. Not too huge, but enough for some speakers to fall and to scare the it out of those attending. At a music festival, Bluesfest, in my city Ottawa, we had a stage collapse in a windstorm a few years back. I was at some weird zoo, animal preserve north of Phoenix in 2012, and there was a tigress and chain-linked compound. This little girl went up to her and blew her a kiss. The tigress looked at her and licked her own, not the little girl's, whiskers, and the crowd went awe. The tigress shifted a little bit and pissed all over the little girl. The crowd was shocked and horrified, but I laughed my ass off. While I was reading this I was so scared it was gonna say she was mauled by the tiger. I had the opposite happen at my local zoo last summer. It's a small zoo and they really are more about education and conservation than anything else. The animals have large enclosures and lots of places to hide, so sometimes you just can't see them. The female tiger was sunning herself on some rocks, but the male tiger was right at the fence pacing back and forth and seemed to be snarling. A group gathered. It really is a small zoo, so maybe 15 to 20 people, and we were all expressing concern for the tiger. Eventually a zookeeper noticed the group and came over. She actually laughed when she realized what we were concerned about. Apparently the tiger just does that sometimes. It was trying to impress the crowd and seemed like a badass. In reality, the female was the boss, so the male was trying to appear tough while the female was busy. The zookeeper jumped the little barrier to prevent people getting close to the fence. She put her hand to the fence and baby talked a little, and the tiger immediately turned into a little kitten, rubbing the fence, rolling onto his belly hoping for pets, chittering happily. It was very cute. I had the opposite happen at my local zoo last summer. I was expecting story about a little girl peeing on a tigress. An animal show at Busch Gardens. The camel started freaking. Also at Busch Gardens, years ago. Elephant took a gigantic, a monumental brap. Goats ran over at warp speed and began feasting on it. The crowd was so appalled, it was wonderful. So much better than watching the goats form a pyramid. I'm giggling thinking about the pool, young girl MC attempting not to retch as the goat handlers tried to interrupt their Red party. I've been given the goat award. My life is full. But, apparently not as full as the goats. I felt a mix of amusement and disgust when I and a few other visitors chanced upon a gorilla lazily fingering its bunghole and then licking it. I saw this on YouTube somewhere. A bodybuilder was strutting his stuff in front of a crowd, warming them up and everything at an event. They absolutely loved it. Many people had attended just to see him. He was at his peak. Huge muscles and sculpted physique. Absolutely amazing. I don't personally like the bodybuilding look, but you've got to respect hard work. The crowd was cheering him and he got so pumped up, so full of energy and emotion that, instead of just walking onto the stage he did an impromptu jump flip. He launched himself high into the air and did this impressive flip. The crowd went berserk. But he was a bodybuilder, not a gymnast. He landed on his neck and died instantly, crumpling on the spot. It is one of the most horrific, sudden and unexpected things I've ever seen. Maybe the worst part was not all of the crowd realized immediately. They kept smiling and cheering for their hero for another minute before it sank in that they had just witnessed him die right in front of them and they were clapping for a dead man. Similar to how comedian, magician Tommy Cooper died. He was known for being the guy whose tricks went wrong and he just kind of muddled through it for a bit, but it always worked in the end. One day he's doing a live stage show and he had a heart attack, collapsed and died instantly. The audience all just thought it was part of his act and started clapping and laughing until someone realized what had happened and closed the curtains. I've seen the video, it really does look like it's part of his act. If you were in the crowd just thinking it was part of the show, it honestly would have been hilarious. The way he collapsed, and the snoring that came from the heart attack. It's very evident from how freaking hard the audience is laughing. I remember one of the comments from the YouTube video was something like, imagine being him, having a heart attack in the middle of your show, audience laughing as hard as they are. Hopefully his final thoughts were, I'm absolutely killing this crowd.